Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Ambrose. Peter is the CEO of The Partnership, a specialized property law firm in Surrey. The Partnership has won a number of accolades, including Best Use of Technology Award at the 2023 Modern Law Conveyancing Awards. Peter founded Legalito, a software addressing the core problems involved with conveyancing. Both The Partnership and Legalito aim to bring real-life change to the world of conveyancing. Peter has 15 years of experience in IT and software. After seeing a gap in the legal market, Peter is now dedicated to providing friendly and efficient conveyancing services to all. So, a very big warm welcome, Peter.
Hi, Rob. Great to be here.
Wow, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. And before we dive into all your amazing experiences to date, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
I have seen a few episodes. In the reality of our law, it's probably a 1.
Fair enough. And with a very sort of confident 1, we'll move straight on to talk all about you. So to begin with, Peter, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background and career journey?
Sure, absolutely. My background was in technology. I'm one of the few people you'll ever come across that actually left the technology sector. Spent about 15 years in it. It's great. It's exciting. I lived in the States, lived in the Netherlands, did all that bit. It gets a bit tiring after a bit, and I decided, you know what, I'll do something much easier. So I thought I'll set up a law firm. So turns out it's really quite tricky. Who'd have thought it? So that was about 15 years ago, started doing that. I started off doing home information packs. We saw that there was something that needed to be done. No one wanted them, but we knew that this was a process that needed to be sorted. I saw it as legal with good technology. So we set up doing that, did well at that, providing good products, providing good services. Wasn't something that we wanted to stay in, only because I didn't see a lot of scope for development in that area. Always liked the idea of setting up a law firm because of that. And then about a couple of years later, set up one of the first ABSs. So and we wanted to focus specifically on one thing. So we figured, why not do property?
Well, I love the famous quote that one of my mentors said to me. He said, I don't fear the man who's, a Bruce Lee quote, I don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And then another person inch wide, mile deep. So I really relate to what you're saying in terms of that sort of specialization. But that kind of leads on nicely to my next question, what you're talking about there, because you are the CEO and you did decide to take that super easy challenge of setting up a law firm. So as the CEO of the Partnership, take us a little bit more back to sort of explaining the why in more detail and also what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. When I looked at the way that law was practiced in this country, I realized that we need to take advice from the Americans. And it's funny you say Suits. Having lived in the States, I figured I had this theory that anything that was over in the States would at some point come over here. And it's true. It doesn't matter whether it's shopping malls or whether it's online shopping or anything like that. I looked at the way that they were providing legal services in the US, and it became really clear that it was specialization that was the future. So when we started the business, the idea being was that we would do all aspects of the law to do with private clients. So whether that was wills and probate, whether that was trusts, whether that was, we wouldn't do divorce because that's just dreadful, but whether that was property. So we had the range of options available to us. That was sort of breaking the rule a little bit because I wanted to specialize. But what I did know was the only way you could deliver really good service is to use technology. I was convinced by it then, I'm convinced by it now, and I have not met anyone that's been able to convince me otherwise, even though you get a lot of people online that try to say that what you really need is really good lawyers. I say you need really good lawyers with really good technology. And that was the goal. So we did what we shouldn't do, and we built our own system. And having sold software for many, many years, we would always say to people that you're lawyers, not software developers. But because we had some experience in software development, we figured, look, you know what? Let's just do that. And that really has been the big difference. I knew that if I could get really good data to my lawyers quickly and efficiently and transparently, they could give better service. And we've done that from day one. So from day one, we've been paperless. From day one, we've always communicated directly with our clients and with agents. And then we were only about 4 or 5 years in when we decided that we were no longer going to use email with our clients. So we only use electronic portals. Everything that we do on our systems is built by ourselves, and it enables us to keep control of what's going on. And that really has been it's a key part of the success, as well as hiring good people, experienced lawyers to run it, but having really, really good technology that really solves the real problems. That's been the difference. And that's really where we are today.
Yeah, and you won't get me fighting you against technology. I'm a huge advocate of technology, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated as well, a certain piece of technology. I love you talked about moving away from email. I mean, look, the reality is most workplaces now probably are operating off a Slack or something similar, or, most of my communications, even on WhatsApp desktop, conversations that you're having and whatever it may be, you can get as advanced, as sophisticated as you like with these things, but just taking sort of gradual steps and embracing technology is something I'm absolutely on board with. I want to talk about your approach, because the partnership has a unique approach to availability and accountability. So what approach do you basically take to reduce the stress, which I've been through many a times, associated with buying a property?
Well, the first thing we say is, if any lawyer says that they're going to take away the stress from moving house, they're not being totally truthful, because the fact of the matter is, it's an absolute nightmare. I still speak to a lot of clients, do a lot of quoting online, quoting to people on the phone. And the first thing I say to them is, how are you finding it so far? And they say, oh, it's really difficult. I'm like, you haven't even got started yet. You wait till it gets started. That's when the pain really begins. What we say is really clear. We cannot take away the stress of it, because the stress is by uncontrollable events, external events. People were relying on third parties to give you information and so forth. However, what we have said, our approach is we must make all data available to clients, lawyers, agents, mortgage brokers. If you're involved in this deal, you know what's going on. And this is where a lot of people struggle, and where a lot of the stress comes from, a lot of the delays come from, because lawyers are either spending ages trying to find this information, usually in paper files, or the clients are calling up because they don't know what's going on. My philosophy was, and my approach was, I need to stop the phones ringing. One of the most common, I had a new lawyer start with me last week, came from a big firm. I said, what's the difference between this place and previously? She said, well, firstly, obviously the people are lovely, but secondly, the big difference was the phones didn't ring. And that's really difficult to achieve, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop the phones ringing. And the way you do that is you have information available to you that you push out to people. So, for example, one idea that we had, that we've always done, is we do a case review every week. There is this philosophy with property that you should touch every file. Okay, people don't do that. Okay, but I make my guys do it. So every Monday, we review every single file, and we give an update both to the agent, to the mortgage broker, and to the client every single week. Okay, most firms won't do that because it's a bit of a pain, and you need the infrastructure to be able to do it. Because if you're running about 50 files, being able to do that is quite time consuming. But if you've got the information available to you in a single screen to say, this is what I've done, this is what I last did, and you do it manually, so you can't automate this stuff, but it forces you to review everything that's going on, and you push information out to a client. When some event happens, not every event, and that's the skill, okay, and that is where our expertise comes in, because what you find is people say, they think, if you don't do this work, that you want to be told of everything that happens all the time. You don't. Because then you get what I call signal blindness, okay? Which is, I'll ignore these notifications because I've got too many of it. It's like having too many red dots on a checklist. But if you know when you need to notify people, and not when someone adds a note to a file, you don't need to notify the client, because all you're going to do is generate a phone call, right? But if you're smart enough to know when people need to be updated, and you push that information out to them, you're going to stop that phone call. Because with a phone call, every time the phone rings, I always say this to people, you don't know who's on the other end of it, and you don't know what they're going to ask. But what you do know is it's going to interrupt what you're doing at that time. And this is when we talk about, people talk about work-life balance and stress and so forth. What they don't realize, because they haven't really had the good enough technology, is that with the right technology, you can significantly reduce stress, because you're giving people more control. And I get really annoyed when people say, work-life balance, all you got to do is work 4 days from home, or, work whenever you like. What we found during the pandemic, when people were working from home, they got far more stressed and they worked far longer hours. So I'm just not buying that. I know that's politically probably not appropriate to say, but because a lawyer, if you say to a lawyer, you take a few days off, that's probably the worst thing they want, because when they come back, They're coming into worse, and people know that. And people say, I'm too scared to take holiday. And the problem is there's not enough honesty given about this, about the real lives of what conveyancers do. I just got a CV in from a candidate, okay? He's used to be running 130 files. 130 files. Great. What does that speak to? Not a good work-life balance, I can tell you.
No. And you make some really good points, because I always talk about, information is not power, acting on information is power. And I love your strategy there of actually, pushing out that information. And, why are so many deals or so many relationships and things fall down? It's lack of communication. And again, you having this proactive approach to, communication channels. So I think there's some really good lessons in there. So thanks for sharing that. But we talk about vulnerability. We talk about sort of authenticity on the show. We talk about challenges and everything else. And I believe you've been quoted saying, you stated that since running the partnership for 12 years, depressingly, I've seen precious little success in this area. What can those in conveyancing be doing to improve this sector like you?
I tell you what they could be doing, okay? They could be learning to stop saying no, all right? Just stop saying no. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and we had to give a 20-second soundbite as to what our best advice was to a room full of lawyers. Stop saying no and say, maybe I'll take a look. Because one of the challenges that we see is what we're trying to do is say to people, look, take a look at what you're doing right now. Do you honestly think it's a really good idea to take a suitcase full of files home on the tube? Is that a really good idea? If that's what working from home looks like, is that good? I'm not so sure. One of our favorite areas, which is the biggest risk area, which is about inquiry management. This is basically where all the claims sit. Did I ask the right questions? Do you honestly think it's a good idea, which is what people do, to print out the email and highlight in red those that are not complete, highlight in orange that are still being worked on, and highlight in green those that are complete? Do you think that's a good idea? If you do, then that's great. But can you honestly look yourself in the mirror and go, this is a really good use of my time doing all this admin? And my advice to people is, rather than just dismissing everything, give yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Listen to a podcast. Look at some software. It's not going to, cost the earth. If you're sitting there going, well, I'm taking my hour's lunch break, well, take 15 minutes out of it, especially if you're a decision maker, just to say, I will take a look at it. And I think the biggest challenge that we see is not that lawyers are averse to change, but they're averse to taking the time to look to change. That's the problem, because they see the risk, they see everywhere is risk, and they say, right, okay, I haven't got time to look outside of that. And if only they would just stop and think and go, it's okay to take a quarter of an hour. It's all right to do that. And I might see something where I go, actually, you know what, that could be useful. Now, on the flip side, the problem that we see, to come back to my point, okay, there's precious little decent technology out there that helps lawyers at all. And I'm sorry, but I don't count onboarding and ID checking as advances in technology. The banks have been doing this for 10, 15 years. And for people to turn around, all right, and say, there's amazing technology out there. You can now get clients to do their ID on their phone. They need to, I guess it's just a very low bar in law.
Yeah. Well, I think, they say, don't they, legal technology is still light years behind fintech and, everything else that goes on with that. Are you tired of the current legal practice management software hitting you with outrageous price increases? Well, it's time to put an end to the renewal pain and discover Clio, the trusted legal practice management solution for thousands of UK solicitors. Did you know that some providers have recently increased their prices by a staggering 300%? Don't let this drain your budget any longer. With Clio, you'll experience cost-effective flexibility, transparent pricing, and a smooth migration process. Choose a plan that fits your needs and budget with no long-term commitments. Monthly billing cycles ensure you only pay for what you use. And guess what? Plans start from just £49 per user per month. No hidden fees or surprises. Worried about the migration process? Don't be. Clio will handle the migration of your existing data and set you up in a way that works for your firm. Their award-winning dedicated support team will make the transition smooth with zero downtime. Say goodbye to price hikes and hello to trusted software. Visit clio.com/UK/pricing to explore more plans and take control of your budget. So let's talk about technology then, in terms of how does the partnership incorporate new technology? How do you sort of, make an assessment on whether this is useful or not? And, what's the standard by which other companies are being measured?
Where we start with? We start with risk.
Okay.
We always start with the fact is, how can we get sued? All right. People don't talk about this enough, all right? How can we get sued How can we lose client money? How can we make mistakes? All right, we start with that. We go, right, let's find out where we make mistakes. And I'll give you a really good example, okay? We had a case a few months ago where we messed up. Firms mess up. We're humans, right? Okay. And the reason why we messed up is because we put a document onto the system, and even though we renamed them and in the proper names and all that kind of stuff, we'd renamed it wrongly. So we thought we didn't have this particular document when we did. Okay. So what we said was, we went, right, we've got to stop that happening, right? Because that's quite painful.
Yeah.
So we then deployed some machine learning into reading documents so we could work out what the document was, what case it was for, name it automatically rather than leaving it up to humans, because humans are not that good at that. So that was one example where we said, okay, well, let's use technology there for a really good reason, for reading documents and checking that we've got the right file name. Another example is that what we used to do is we used to send over the portal a document for a client to fill in their bank details. Okay, you fill in the bank details and you sign it, and then you upload it onto the portal. They don't really need to sign it anymore because we know where they're coming from on the portal, but we do anyway because it makes them feel good. What we found was, of course, we had a case where a client uploaded 2 of those, one of which was right and one of which was wrong. Obviously, where did we send the £1.5 million to? Obviously the wrong one. Okay. At that point, I said, well, hold on a minute. I've got to stop doing that. Okay. Because obviously humans are making mistakes. So what we did was, on the portal, we put a page and said, could you put your bank details in here? And what was really interesting was that all we did was put a little red dot on one of the tabs on the portal. And within a week, 500 clients put their bank details in. So what we did was instantly eliminated that risk of our guys keying something wrong. And this has really been the philosophy. It was like, if the client makes a mistake, well, that's the client's mistake. If we make a mistake, it's our mistake. Why would we put ourselves in a position where we are more likely to make mistakes? It's just madness. But this is the way that law firms work. They go, don't worry, we've got really careful people. I'm sitting there going, no, if I can get rid of where the people are the weakest, in the weakest element of people's behavior is in risk evaluation, but also checking stuff. They get bored, it's repetitive, whatever. So let's let the computer do that, and let's let the humans do the interpretation of the communication.
Yeah.
But you just don't see this with law firms, because they go, no, I've got an amazing lawyer and they never make a mistake. Well, I've got news for you. 70% of all claims against lawyers are in residential property. So I think they do make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we are only human. We are not, we're programmed to sleep. Computers don't need to sleep. Computers can work all the time, at that same optimal level within reason. So, there's not every day. One day you might be unwell. Again, typically technology is not going to be unwell and have a headache when it's reviewing said document. So, these are all quite interesting things. What I'm really keen to talk about, you sort of touched on it lightly in jest about sort of your career transition, but you had a 15-year career in IT and software. So before transitioning into the legal sector, was there a real specific moment or element that really prompted this shift into a completely different industry, to be frank, which is very alien to technology?
Was there a moment? Yeah, I think it was when I last got fired. I think that was the thing. You can only be fired so many times when you go, I've had enough. I was in software sales for many years, and there comes a time where you go, I always joke, I say I've been fired in 3 continents, and it's really tiring. And you just sort of go, enough. I wanted to start a business. It wasn't going to be in tech, interestingly, because I was a bit burned by it. I was like, look, I've been selling software. I was selling help desk software at the time, IT service desks and so forth. I knew how hard it was, and I didn't want to do that. So it was really the case of what drew me to it was the introduction of home information packs in 2007. And this was what interested me about it was this was a real problem that was affecting consumers. Immediately, they couldn't put their house on the market without it. So here was something that was worthwhile doing. The rights or wrongs of it are a bit irrelevant. They needed to do it. Okay, I was always a big fan that if you could collect enough information up front, it would make things go quicker. And of course, if you remember, 99% of anyone involved in the property market in their time said it was a bad thing. And yet now when you read anything, they go, oh, no, it was a good thing. And you go, yeah, it's funny, this cyclical nature of stuff, isn't it? Anyway, I said, look, this is something that I think I could do because I had my classical sales training that I had from the IT world, which is very, very highly trained in sales. And it would give me the opportunity to get satisfaction of going and talking to people and saying, look, we can solve this problem for you, and delivering a service to the public, which I'd never done before. This was totally new. I'd never worked with the public before. And I thought, that's an interesting challenge, but I thought that I could do something with it. And I thought that we could do something good which was always important.
Yeah, I love that. And, I just hear the passion and enthusiasm in your voice as well, which is always very important when you're, thinking of giving things a go. And talking of giving things a go, in June 2023, you launched Legalito to specifically address the challenges around the inquiry management by drawing on experiences in both conveyancing and technology sectors. So would you mind expanding on this and sharing what Legalito's main aims are?
Yeah. Its main aim is to revolutionize the house buying and selling process, fundamentally. I've got 4,000 firms to convince of this, and I'm getting started well. Basically, what happened was I'd spent 15 years since I started the partnership with people coming to me saying, I've got this technology solution to the conveyancing problem. And they would show me something, and I'd say, that's really interesting. Who did you speak to before you developed this? And they would say invariably, and they still say, well, I moved house last year and it was dreadful. And I'm like, yeah, we know that. Okay, we know that. But who did you speak to? No, I'm okay because I'm a process engineer, or I worked in the financial services. It's like, but you don't understand what the problem is. And that was what was so frustrating, is these people would rock up literally on a monthly basis. Hey, I've got something new. So what we looked at is we looked at what we had built, and we said, right, where were the big risk areas? And we found three of the big areas were a significant risk. And we chose conveyancing just because that's what we were doing, and we had 11, okay? But it's true of anything. But the first thing was checklists. People are really bad at checklists. They don't use them. They don't have them. They're quite difficult to do if you actually do the work, because cases change and they have to dynamically shift with them. The secondly was caseload allocation. Who's doing the work and how many cases are they running, and are they best people to do it? And the third one was inquiries. We knew as lawyers that when the claims come in, the first place you look at, there's two places. There's one, the report on title, and then the other one was, did I ask the right question? Yeah. So we went to our insurers and we said, where did all the claims come from? And they go, well, the first place is inquiries where lawyers don't ask the inquiries that their clients ask them. And the second place is where they don't get the answers they don't correctly get the right answers. So here was something where all the claims were sitting. We'd always done it this way. We'd always managed these electronically because we saw these. I mentioned earlier, what areas do we apply tech to? We saw this was a huge area of risk. Yeah. So we stored it all in one place because we thought, well, at least we know what's going on. Didn't matter whether we were buying, selling, whatever. At least we knew what was going on. So what we said was we would share these with our clients. So we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, which is amazing. So the clients do, again, they answer the questions because they're the people that know, right, on a sale. Then we were sharing them with estate agents because they wanted to know what was going on. So we did all that. And then we went, right, what's the final piece in the puzzle? Final piece of the puzzle, we've got to get other lawyers to go, that's a good idea, I should do that. And that's why we founded Legalito. So we founded the company. We didn't do it with a big bang or anything like that because we knew that lawyers were fed up with being sold to. We knew that we had to get the trust, and it was a hearts and minds issue, not a not technology problem. And we had to get people going, you know what, I trust this, I like it. So that was in June. So that's about 6-7 months ago. So about that. And in that time, and we're really just getting started. It's really early days, but we've already got 1,000 lawyers that have registered to use it from over 500 firms. And we've had people actively replying through the platform, over 540 lawyers from over 300 firms.
Incredible.
So thank you. I mean, what I say to people is people will use technology if it's not terrible. And the problem is, or irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think you what really fascinates me about your mindset, and it's what a lot of people need to talk about, is you need to get fixated on the problem, right? Yeah. And you're absolutely fixated on what is the 100%. Core problem, because if you can agitate that pain point enough, people are going to buy or adopt the technology because it's so fundamental to that particular pain point. And I love your line of thinking along that way.
I mean, I would love to say that we're super geniuses and we come from the planet Zog, okay, but we don't. What we realized was that the gods of conveyancing were not coming down the mountainside with 2 tablets of stone waiting to give them to lawyers. It's not the regulators. It's not the government. No one's there is going to help you. They're just not, okay? The change has to come from within. So if we're going to do that, we better be darn sure that anything that we produce, lawyers will go, I can use that.
Yeah.
And that was the difficulty, because what you need to write software, and my big concern, funnily enough, that came from my experience. My big concern was, how are we going to deal with the support calls? When people call in with questions, well, we've now got 35,000 inquiries on the system, over 2,200 cases. We've had 2 support calls. Mm. That's because the software is designed in a way that works and is also simple enough for people to actually use. So the philosophy was, How many people have been on a training course to use Trello? You don't. So I'm like, right. And in fact, we borrowed even we used some of the libraries from Trello because we really liked what they were doing. So we're like, well, that presents well. People are using it. They've got millions of users worldwide. They're doing something right. So even though we'd already built the system in-house, we were using it internally, okay? And we had been doing that. We'd put over 30,000 transactions through it. We'd already were using it. It still took us 18 months to build the platform.
Yeah, I can
because
believe
it's
it.
difficult to do simple. It's difficult to do it, and I still see stuff, and you go, "Oof, that's complicated."
Yeah, no, absolutely. Keep it super simple. Absolutely,
Yeah.
we all know about the KISS principle as well. I love that. And ultimately, once you start, and people talk about businesses. Ultimately, generating value in your business by creating efficiencies and processes and actually systems that work is so important. Otherwise, you've basically just given yourself a job with really bad hours and no actual way to exit or share those shares at some point. But we must talk more smartly, and you touched on it, about smart inquiries, because the meaning behind Legalito smart inquiries, shining a light into the black hole of conveyancing. So just tell us a little bit more.
Sure. When people talk about conveyancing, their normal reaction is, ugh, it's a box ticking exercise, right? That's the normal thing. I always say to people, I really wish it was, because if it was much easier, my life would be a lot easier, and I wouldn't have to have nearly 100 people doing this stuff, The reality is that people, when they talk about technology and conveyancing, they talk about the stuff around the periphery. They talk about onboarding. They talk about ID. They talk about digital signatures. Those are the bits at the beginning and the end. When you look at where lawyers spend most of their time, it's the middle bit. Okay, and it's the bit where, as a buyer, I say to the seller, I've got a load of questions because there's gaps in the data that you've provided me, and I need to do a gap analysis and say, right, this is what's missing. And typically what happens is a lawyer will send 10 questions over to the seller. The seller will respond with 5, of which 3 of them will be to follow, and the next 2 will be, we're taking client's instructions. And so the buyer's lawyer is now sat there going, well, where the heck am I? And what they do is they'll either stick it in a Word document. There's 2 solutions right now. There's either you stick it in a Word document, and you might color code it if you're feeling fancy, or you might use a traveling draft in an email, both of which are totally unstructured and totally chaotic. And if you were to say to a lawyer, so where are we then? Just out of curiosity, what's outstanding? Okay. And if you want to do this, ask any lawyer that's working on a case, what's outstanding with the inquiries? And they'll go, let me check. And they'll pull up a paper file and look for the red and green and orange stripes. Okay. So what we said was, this was a black hole. This is where no one's got a clue what's going on. The buyer doesn't know what's going on. The seller's lawyer doesn't know what's going on. The clients haven't got a clue. The agents are in the dark. The mortgage broker's even more in the dark. And it's just like a black hole that gets sucked into it. And this is where the delays happen on conveyancing. Everyone bleats on to say, oh, why does it take 22 weeks to complete a deal at the moment when we've got all this technology? Because we're not applying that technology to the bit that's taking the time. And the problem is, because people don't understand that, okay, they just go, oh, well, it's just lawyers being inefficient. And it's like, well, they are, but is anyone going to do anything about it? So that's where we said, right, that's what we're going to fix. What we're going to do for lawyers is we're going to say to you, look, think in a structured way. Store it in a structured way. You're lawyers, for goodness sake. You always think this way anyway. The problem is you've got no way to capture it. So what we'll do is we'll give you the tools, and we'll make it so it integrates with your case management system. We'll make it so it's a single sign-on, so you haven't got to set up an account, because we know that portal fatigue is a real problem. Okay. And we'll have it that you haven't got to install any software, and it will work anywhere. You can share documents, you can share questions, you can publish it, you can import it, you can suck the data out. We're not precious about it. But the point is, we're all looking at the same place. That's the only way you can fix this, because if people are looking at different information, they're never going to work out where they are, which is why we call it the black hole. And that's why we talk about the guesswork involved in conveyancing. It's sitting there going, well, we think we've answered all the questions, but you know what? Honestly, can I say hand on heart? No, I can't.
No. And again, I love how you sort of go into details and give some really, basic examples so people can really understand this. Are you a mid-sized law firm looking to thrive in 2024 and beyond? Look no further. Clio has just released their highly anticipated 2024 Legal Trends Report for mid-sized law firms. This comprehensive report is packed with actionable insights that will empower your firm to stay competitive in the ever-changing legal landscape. Discover how to enhance your billing and collections, harness the power of AI tools, and leverage cloud-based technology for success. Download the 2024 Legal Trends Report for mid-sized law firms today. Visit clio.com/UK/resources to learn more. What do you hope for Legalito users to achieve from using the platform, and what are the benefits ultimately of using it?
What do I hope? I hope they have massively reduced risk. That's our number one thing. It's massive risk reduction. People need to talk about risk. The problem with risk is humans are very bad at evaluating it. And what we need to do is, if we take steps to go, right, I'm going to check that all the answers I've got to those questions, and I structure them, that I've got the appropriate answers to it, and I can see that, that's going to reduce my risk. Good news, one of the unintended consequences of this, it'll make your deals quicker because you're spending less time checking whether things are right or what's wrong. So you've got quicker deals that are less risky. And what our goal is with Legalito is we want to have a platform where people can say, I trust the information, it's come from the other side, it's audited, I've got a historic, I can take it out of it. And what I can do is I can reduce the sheer pain and irritation that is the administrative side of conveyancing. Now, we're only starting with conveyancing because it's true for all aspects of law. Doesn't matter whether it's secured lending, doesn't matter whether it's commercial property, it doesn't matter what it is. Any situation where you're asking a question of another lawyer, where they're replying with evidence and documents, you've got this same problem. So what we're saying to lawyers is you need to stop the way you're doing it at the moment because it's haphazard and it's risky. And the aim of the platform is to get lawyers to say, I trust it because it's here, I can share it. Both sides can see what's going on. It's not a stick to beat them with. We don't want to say it as that. But what we do want to say is, and if we wanted to, heaven forbid, share this with our clients or share it with an estate agent, we can do that because it's a trusted source of data. And if we can work towards, from the financial sector, as they call it, STP, straight through processing, where data comes in at one point, goes all the way through the transaction without being changed, and we can all see this, then we're going to massively improve the efficiency of the process. We will get transaction times down and we will get claims down.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we're all in favor of that. And you were sort of talking probably further down the field with some of the ambitions, but do you sort of have any sort of bold plans or things on terms of developing Legalito in the future even more?
Oh, absolutely we do. Yeah, we've just got started. We're 6 months in. 35,000 inquiries, 2,500 cases. 1,000 lawyers have said yes. The next stage is, how do we break that horrible monopoly of lawyers using email with their clients? They have to stop doing that for security reasons, okay? So we're already developing, we've got our own client portal that we use. We're developing a client portal for the inquiry section because we've seen the benefits of that. That's the first step. Okay. Once we've got that information, the sky's the limit, because then we could, for example, sharing bank details between lawyers. Okay. An area of risk, fraud. Well, why don't we, if we can share that securely, why wouldn't we do that? If it's encrypted, which it is, and secure. Once we've done that, then we can look at all other elements. You could even take it to the extent of saying, okay, maybe if we were transferring money, we're not that interested in that side of it, but if we can make a backbone for the industry that's got value and it's not just a backbone for backbone's sake, then we're going to get people using it.
I love that. And again, it's just all about sort of, improving, really sort of getting as close as possible to agitate that pain point to provide the relief. So really like that. Look, it's been made to sound simple. But there are challenges when you start businesses and when you're trying to do innovative things as well. So what challenges have you had to face since starting your businesses in the legal services industry, and how have you managed to overcome them?
Yeah, I think certainly with the partnership, what our biggest challenge was how we had to overcome the fact that we were new, we were a startup, we were modern. We started in Guildford. I mean, you cannot imagine, all right, the resentment that was caused when people said, this upstart, they used to call us the young upstarts in their best Surrey accents. Yeah? And it was very much a case of, how dare they come in here and they pile it high and they sell it cheap. So establishing credibility was a big challenge. And that's what we had to work on. And what I knew, that where we got our break was we were working with a big London agent, and they were very demanding. It was Foxtons. And they said, look, you need to deliver this kind of service. And so we knew that if we delivered that service, that we could get credibility. And they were open-minded enough to say, okay, fine. So we were sort of stumbling around a little bit, I must say, for the first 18 months, going, who should we sell to? And I wasn't sure, because in the HIP business, we were saying to, working with huge country piles around the country. We were working with the likes of Stratton Parker and with Savills. But we couldn't do that because that wasn't the right market for us. Okay, that was the traditional local solicitor, and we didn't want to compete there anyway. And I did have that light bulb moment, which was first-time buyers in London. And that's when I realized that they were time poor. They wanted stuff that was online, and all they wanted was good service. So that was my light bulb moment. I went, thank goodness. I mean, it took 2 years, right? But thank goodness we found that. And that's when we built on that. And we still, to this day, we still focus on the London market because they're time poor. They want good service, and we can execute on.
Yeah, again,
you
identified it, just to sort of mention that, and then you went in and acted on it. Yeah, and tell me about Legalito then.
Yeah, I mean, it is all about execution. Legalito is a really interesting problem, right? Because what we're sitting here, we're saying right to lawyers, right, we're working on a collaborative solution, right? You get seminars and webinars and like all these conferences talking about collaboration, right? I say nonsense. I can think of other words that are less polite, okay? Absolute nonsense, right? Collaboration does not come around because people post a few memes on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, okay? Oh, we're going to work together. Absolute rubbish. What we knew, all right, was we were going to say to other lawyers, we think you should use this platform. And the immediate reaction was going to be no. Yeah, the answer is no. What's the question? And in fact, when we talk to people, well, quite often people would say, oh, it's been tried before and it's failed because other people wouldn't buy into it. And you go, well, it hasn't really been tried before. No one's actually really built a platform. You have to go all the way back to the Law Society with 𝐤𝐢𝐬𝐬, with their platform. And yes, okay, that failed, but that was because it was just doomed to fail from the start. But no one's really tried it. So we were sitting there going, how on earth are we going to get other lawyers to overcome that? And it was a huge challenge, and it is today. Okay, so what we had to do was that we had to select a number of advocates. So I picked six firms in my first cohort. I said, right, I want you to go and talk to people and believe in it and make sure they use it. Well, of those, 4 of them did nothing, right? It was great and they liked it, but they were too busy. And there was 2 of them went, you know what, we're going to do this. And they really went to bat. And then I brought in the secret weapon, which was my law firm, the partnership. And from November, I said, right, we're going to say to the other sides, we really want you to use this. I mean, really, really want you to use this, okay? And so, and that was when we started then to get the confidence to go, right, you know what? Other people need to drink the same Kool-Aid. But that was a huge and is a huge challenge. And what happens is you need to get critical mass with a product like this, which is getting lawyers to talk to one another. Okay, you've got 2 choices. You can either hope or you can really be quite insistent that they use it. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but it's a little bit like this material information that you see at the moment, okay, where people are saying, oh, sellers should provide all this information to agents before they sell their house. Do they have to? No. Are they going to? No. So what we realized was we were going to have to be a little bit more insistent to do this, but also we had to build credibility. In terms of background, it's quite an interesting case study. The entire marketing plan was based on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Start to finish, because it was all about trust. We had to build trust, and that's what we do. So everything on our website, everything is about building trust. Who else is using it? How are we progressing? Are people using it? And that's the challenge that's how we had to overcome that.
Yeah, no, and I love it. And you make a good point about sort of, actually putting collaboration into practice more than the words. So no, I really like you stressing that. So before we look to close, it's been great learning about your journey and all the sort of challenges and also the exciting things that you're doing and will be doing in terms of disrupting legal services. What advice do you have for those who may be thinking of starting their own business in the legal sector?
Absolutely. My first advice is do it. Okay, don't talk about it. Do it. The other advice, and I'd say this is my 4th startup now, okay? My advice is if you don't believe 100% that it's going to be successful, then don't even try, okay? If you think 99%, yeah, it's probably going to be, don't do it. Don't do it. Because if you've got any doubts that you shouldn't do it, okay, you've got to believe 100% you've got to do it. A final bit of advice is please solve a real problem, okay? I'm getting a bit tired of people coming to me solving problems that they think exist. It's like, get into the industry, get to know it, live it, breathe it. Don't rock up at a law firm, for example, and say, I can solve your problem. All you've got to do is log into the system and do X, Y, Z, when you've never really thought it through about what the lawyers are going to do, or where it relies on something else happening. So, for example, all we need to do is integrate this into a case management system and it will be successful. Well, do you know you can do that? Well, no, I haven't checked. Why do you think you can? And there's nothing infuriates me more when people say, all I need is a helper. All I need is a helper to make my business successful. If you can't make it successful, stand alone through your own endeavors, it's not going to work. Because if as soon as you start trying to pass on to someone else. Someone said to me yesterday, right, they said, oh, what you need to do is could you help me sell my case management system to other people? No, I can't help you because that's your product and I don't understand it, but good luck to you. Okay. Yeah. It's not going to work that way.
Yeah. I think you make a really poignant point about something that I tell people about all the time is, and I think I mentioned it earlier in the show, is being passionate about what you're doing. I.e., there are going to be a lot of people that say, do you know what, Peter, I think Legalito is rubbish. I don't think it's going to work whatsoever. But because you believe it and so passionate and relentlessly have that 100% will to win and want it to work, you can get through those naysayers. And naysayers can hold you back unless you have that belief. So I think that's really, really strong advice. And it's just been a great episode. And I've really enjoyed learning from you and hearing your journey, Peter. And I'm sure our listeners will want to know more. So if they would, where can they find out more about the partnership, Legalito? And also feel free to shout out any web links and social media handles. We'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, obviously the partnership, that's our property law firm. That's thepartnershiplimited.com. Legalito, pretty straightforward, legalito.co.uk. We encourage people to come along, take a look. Anyone can use the software. There's no charge. We want people to use it. You can go on there. You can get on there with a single sign-on. I just had someone, a law firm in Norwich, 10 people just registered and logged on within a minute. And it's literally, you click on the button and try it. So it's legalito.co.uk.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Wishing you lots of continued success with the partnership, with Legalito, and no doubt future businesses. But from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.